This is one of the most beautiful forests in the world. Spread over 3 million hectares of Tasmania off the coast of southern Australia, its rich ecosystem home to a variety of rare species. Our guide in the depths of this prehistoric forest is Bob Brown, the leader of Australia's Green Party and a local senator.
Here it is as beautiful as any place on earth. These vast forest giants, and beneath them the rainforest and these ancient ferns, all full of wildlife.
The forest shelters 500-year-old ferns, some more than 4 meters tall, and rare huon pines that can live for thousands of years.
This is the sassafras. These trees were here 65 million years ago when the dinosaurs were in Tasmania.
The undisputed king of this Jurassic Park is the giant eucalyptus, unique to Tasmania, which at 90 meters is as high as a 30-story building. But the forest is now being threatened by the insatiable demands of the global paper industry. The Styx Valley is in southern Tasmania. Bob Brown, the leader of the Green Party and a Tasmanian senator, accompanies us to an industrial logging site. The loggers leave a path of destruction in their wake.
And last time I was here, this was natural forest, and I took this photograph. But now the forest is gone, and this big tree has been taken from the scene. And the trees at the back will be next to be cut. It is huge. It is 20 metres around. I could not fit it in my bedroom, but it has been here for 500 or 600 years, and within 5 or 6 hours it has been cut.
Tasmania, lying off the coast of southeast Australia, is one of the country's 7 states. Its 32 square kilometres of forest represent an area the size of Belgium. During the 1960s, permission was granted to exploit the island's most precious resource, its wood. The paper industry at the time was booming. When the 60s began, world demand was 75 million tonnes a year. By 2005, it had reached almost 370 million tonnes. The industry remains a lucrative investment prospect. By 2020, global consumption of paper is expected to reach over 600 million tonnes. Paper comes from wood, so Tasmania faced the prospect of becoming a huge open-air pulp factory. But the Ecologists have mounted a campaign to stop the chainsaw massacre. A place called Florentine, the eco-warriors have established a bizarre encampment. They've been here for 2 years, trying to prevent the construction of a road.
These forests have never had a road, but this road is the start of a death trail into the forest. And from the road, the loggers will come with their bulldozers and chainsaws and serially destroy the forest.
It would make a very interesting...
The protesters have gone to extreme lengths. In an effort to keep the loggers out, wrecked cars have been fastened to the ground as a roadblock. Their tactics include attaching themselves inside the vehicles, making them even harder to budge.
There's a hole punched just under the where the driver's side would be, and a steel cylinder is driven into the ground and concreted and star picketed in, and it's got like a little rod that comes across the cylinder, and whoever's manning these wears a bracelet like this, and sticks the arm down the pipe if the police come in case it busts, and clips onto the pipe. And essentially the cops need to tear these things apart with the jaws of life and angle grinders and eventually cut you from the metal pipe. So
Handcuffing themselves to the engines is the Ecologists' latest way of stopping the loggers from getting to work.
Tasmania, for fuck's sake.
But sometimes the situation gets heated, as in October 2008. The eco-warriors themselves filmed the scene. An ecologist has chained himself to the engine of a car. When they arrive in the morning, the loggers see that the site is occupied, and things soon get nasty.
Come on, cock! You gotta fucking go!
An activist stands up to the logger, but he does not resort to violence, as he is a pacifist.
Fuck off! You're not about enough of it! What about the fucking enough of it?
Easy, mate, easy. You don't need to do this.
Fuck off!
You don't need to do
Fuck
this.
off! Fuck off! Holy fucking Jesus Christ! Get out of me, fucking way!
Just stop pushing your
Fuck off!
All right. Just take it easy.
Fuck off! Where's that
No one
fucking? I
wants
want
to
to smash your fucking vehicles up!
You don't
Get out of it! Don't fucking want to fucking will! Can't bear me fucked! Go get fucked!
During the same week at another site, an eco-warrior, this time hidden in a tree, films with his mobile phone.
Fuck away, you bastards! Out of me, fuck away, you cunts! Out of it, you cunts! On you, bastards!
To shift the protesters from their cars, this time the logger goes for them with an axe.
Ah, fucking way!
An activist gets out of the car, and he is badly beaten.
Get out! Fucking get out! Get out! Fucking Christ off! Fucking on! Get out! Get out, cunt! Fucking off!
Back at the encampment in Florentine, the protesters have also had visitors. This time it wasn't the loggers who came to attack them, but the police.
yeah, the cops came in yesterday, and there was no one in them, so they tore them to shreds, smashed them with our tools, like sledgehammers and axes and stuff, and left all the trash. Like, I've just been cleaning up all morning, and this is what you see. Like, it's still filthy, eh? But I don't know, they're still kind of
Do you know it was the police, or
Yeah.
was there no forestry people with them?
no forestry.
The wrecked cars are not the only obstacle used to stop the loggers. Here is the second line of defense.
So just be careful, these structures here are attached to a tree sit further up. They're designed to stop any of the logging machinery coming in, because if any of this structure is removed, the tree sit will fall and the person will be hurt.
The technique is simple. If the authorities or the loggers come onto the site, they will put the protesters' lives in danger. If the loggers try to force their way in and someone falls from a tree, there is no way they can claim it was an accident. And if the protester dies, it will be murder. There are 20 protesters from all over the world in the trees, including this woman from France.
Hello, how's it going?
Good, thanks. It's such a beautiful day. Il y a eu pas mal de...
There are a lot of cops who came by.
sont venus.
They might force us off at any time now.
On peut se faire évacuer d'un instant à l'autre.
The protesters stay in the trees 24 hours a day, and sometimes for days on end.
These people are heroes. They are. They're in the front line, slowing down, if not stopping the logging.
The eco-warriors have taken on the wood industry. 10 companies share the market. Their combined turnover is 750 million euros a year. Only one of these companies agreed to let us film their logging sites, Forestry Tasmania, a state-owned operation. Forestry Tasmania cuts down 3.5 million tons of wood every year. It's a big player in the sector. The site manager exploiting the forest has brought employment to the region.
Especially for country people, there's, all the people I have employed, through both jobs from the local area, from the Huon district. It just gives them an opportunity to advance their skills, I suppose. It's as you'll see, these machines are fairly high tech these days, and it takes a fairly special person to operate them.
Modern logging technology is extremely sophisticated. Axes are no longer used, not even chainsaws. The loggers don't even have to get out of their vehicles. In just a few seconds, their machinery can cut down a tree as tall as 60 or 70 metres. Once the tree is cut down, it is fed through a machine to strip off its branches and its bark. The most sought-after trees are the eucalyptus, as their fibre is the best for making paper pulp. And pulp accounts for 90% of the trees cut down by the Tasmanian wood companies. The eucalyptus trees are loaded onto trucks and sent to the north of the island to be turned into wood chip, exported to Japan, where it will be transformed into paper.
We're harvesting it for pulpwood to be exported to Japan, and also for birchwood to be cut into peelers to be exported to Thailand.
All that remains is the wood Forestry Tasmania has cut down but does not sell. These leftovers, in fact, count for 75% of the trees cut down. 3/4 of each tree is simply left on the ground to rot. A catastrophic waste. And to get rid of this unsold wood, the wood companies use a radical method. In the heart of the Tasmanian forest, there's a helicopter landing strip. Dave Robson works for Forestry Tasmania. His job is to clean up the sites after they've been exploited.
This is a brew. That's just ordinary petrol with a gelling agent in it. That's all we use. Yeah, napalm's what general people would think of.
The mixture is very similar to the napalm used by the American Army during the Vietnam War.
We'll move across to the Dragon.
The Dragon, a tank filled with 200 litres of petrol and gel, which will be attached to the helicopter. The helicopter arrives to be refueled. For the first time, they allow us to film the process. This is the Picton Forest. The helicopter sprays the petrol and gel on the abandoned tree stumps below, and everything catches fire. The area is so vast that the helicopter will need to refill 3 times. Each year, 150 square kilometres go up in smoke. The enormous fires mean the forestry industry itself actually produces more carbon dioxide pollution than all the cars, buses, boats and trains in Tasmania put together. But for the logging industry, it's necessary so that they can replant.
In the wet forest, we need to clear the understory species after harvesting. We need to open up mineral soils to sunlight, and one way we can actually do that is to use the burning process. We harvest, we burn, and then we sow seed within 12 or 18 hours after the burning process. We really emulate what Mother Nature does in a wildfire, and fire plays a huge part in the life of a eucalypt tree.
Once the areas have been cleared, the loggers replant the eucalyptus trees to make more paper pulp. But these will be common eucalyptus trees, not the giant eucalyptuses of the prehistoric forest. Well-ordered rows of trees, all of uniform shape and size. One single species, which will little by little replace diversity achieved over the millennia. In Tasmania, the huge forest fires of the wood industry are a cause of controversy. But the industry has a surprising argument to defend the practice. These fires have ecological benefits.
What the forest industry does in the area that it manages is that it manages fire to ensure the sustainable use of the resource over an extended period of time.
It's not good
careful, but we won't.
Bob Brown, however, is entirely unconvinced by the wood industry's new passion for sustainable development. In Hobart, the capital of Tasmania, we show him our footage. Bob Brown recognises the location straight away, the Picton Forest, a symbolic place for Australian ecologists.
This is a national park until 1976 because of its magnificent forest. And the government in 1976 gave this national park to the loggers, to the forest industry. But it is of World Heritage value.
Bob Brown fought for the Picton Forest between 1976 and 1993. It was a sacred area for the ecologists.
When the loggers came into to log this East Picton Forest, I joined the environmentalists who were camped out in the forest, and we were attacked a number of times. We were dragged out from under the machines, and some people were hurt. It took a woman to take civil action to have one of the loggers convicted of creating injury and harm and assault to the environmentalists. This forest has never had an axe, never had a chainsaw, has never been logged. It has been primeval. It is ancient.
A primeval forest, meaning it's a virgin forest, never previously touched by human hands. On the front line, stuck between the eco-warriors and the industrialists, are the transporters, the drivers who take the wood from one place to another. None of them wanted to talk to us, except for Rodney Fletcher. The big forestry companies pay him per load. Every time the eco-warriors stop him from driving, he loses his salary. However, he remains positive.
Is this a hard job?
Cream job.
Yeah?
It's beautiful. Yep.
Yeah, why?
Why? Because you're out and all the bush boys here just become like your family. And it's just, you're so free, you're not built up around the area or... Yeah, I love it. I love the bush. Beautiful.
What do you think of those guys who are against your job?
Oh, everyone's got their own opinion, but you best keep to yourself. Nah, yeah, everyone's got their own opinion. Yeah. I mean, everyone's got their own, it's like us. You know, we've got our own beliefs with this. Everybody thinks because we cart logs we're bad people. But, you know, we only do it, it's a job.
Yeah.
You know, it's no different a lawyer or bank or anything. You need to put food on the table, mate, and I love it. Best job I've ever had.
But not all the drivers are as easygoing as Rodney Fletcher. In November 2003, an Australian documentary maker filmed this truck as it was making its way back from the forest, empty. The truck stops and the driver jumps down.
It's actually quite difficult to watch this. My heart starts pounding and the adrenaline starts going. G'day. Hey.
That day, Brian Dimmick was filming on a public road, completely legally.
Show us some ID then.
Sorry?
Show us some ID.
I don't have to show you any ID. Why should I show you any ID?
Because you photographed me.
Well, that's okay. It's a public place. I'm allowed to photograph you. That's assault. Look.
Put it away. Put the fucking thing away.
And when he started, I didn't imagine that he'd keep going. I thought, oh, he's coming over just to show his aggression, and was very surprised when he kept attacking and attacking and attacking. Broke my camera, pushed me down a 2-metre ditch, and gave me this injury. But it's not very pleasant for me to watch that anymore. Technically, what I'm suffering is damage to 3 discs in my lower spine, including one disc which has become extruded, and the remains of that disc are now applying permanent pressure on the nerves all down the right-hand side of my leg particularly. And so I'm in permanent pain, very limited in how much I can move around, limited in carrying weight, have trouble driving, have trouble standing and walking, have trouble sitting sometimes.
That's okay, it's a public
The
place.
trucker's punishment was minimal, and Brian has been unable to take his case further.
The lawyers who are in charge of the case have decided that they're not going to take the case any further, and I'm completely stuck. I can't find any lawyer who will act for me. I believe that it's because in Tasmania everything is controlled by a few powerful people, and lawyers and politicians and people in the media are all very scared of being blacklisted, of being seen to be associated with anything green.
Brian now feels abandoned.
Well, basically, in one way or another, they've destroyed everything that is important in my life, and I've even had to sell my house over this. I can't work. So the only thing that I can do now is to dedicate myself to making environmental films and films about wildlife subjects, and to let as many people know as possible what's going on in Tasmania and how appalling the destruction of the Tasmanian environment is.
To justify the exploitation of the forest in Tasmania, the industrialists have a cast iron argument. Wood equals work.
Forestry and forest activity employs over 6,500 people. That is a very important contributor to the social well-being and the social life of the community.
For a long time, this was true, but things are changing. With mechanisation, the wood sector has made 40% of its employees redundant over the past 10 years. The sector currently employs only 3% of the active population of Tasmania. It's not only the ecologists who are up in arms. We head for the village of Franklin, on the south of the island. Here, people are feeling threatened by the forestry industry. Carpenters, local craftsmen who make boats or furniture, people who know the trees of Tasmania like the back of their hands.
And the thing about celery top is that it does bend very easily, if it's steamed.
And the other thing about celery top is it holds fixings beautifully. It holds screws, and it is very good to rove, which is the banging of the copper nails, and so you get a clamping effect through it.
The celery top pine, literally a pine tree with a head like a stick of celery, only grows in Tasmania. However, it is more and more difficult for the craftsmen to find, because when the forestry industry torches the eucalyptus scraps, everything else goes up in flames too.
Most of the stuff that's burnt consists of the so-called minor species: celery top, myrtle, sassafras, blackwood, and things like that.
With so much wood being burnt, there is precious little left for Tasmania's 2,000 artisans. The most heavily criticised forestry company is Guns. With 2,600 employees and a turnover of 800 million Australian dollars, Guns is Australia's largest logging company. It is also the main target of the eco-warriors, who regularly hold protests outside their head office. Some residents of the region accuse Guns and the other forestry companies of literally poisoning the earth of Tasmania. For many years, Evelyn DeVito had a farm in Preolena, on the northwest of the island. For centuries, this area has been known for its pastures, but in the year 2000, the industrialists came to plant eucalyptuses.
I have a photograph here that was taken in the year 2000, just as the plantations were beginning to come in Preolena. And what you can see is the pasture that used to be up along the hillside there, but also what we don't see now at all because of the plantation trees is the rolling fertile valley that was there, that produced large amounts of potatoes and dairy products. It was a very productive landscape.
Today, many of the region's farms have been replaced with eucalyptus trees. But what makes Evelyn DeVito most angry with the wood industry is that they have sprayed the environment with poison. 1080, a violent chemical substance. For years, pieces of vegetables soaked in 1080 were distributed in the plantations to kill the wild animals who were eating the eucalyptus seeds and saplings. In 2003 and 2004, nearly 100,000 poisoned animals were found. Some of them were protected species like the wombat or the striped possum.
It certainly kills the browsing wildlife immediately. It's also a real problem for pet owners because if a cat or a dog eats the carcass of an animal that's died of 1080, they die and die very quickly and painfully. Several of the original people who left Preolina lost dogs, and when we finally got ourselves a dog, talking to the veterinarian in Wynyard, he had horrific stories to tell about people calling from Preolina, and in his words, he could hear the dogs screaming and knowing that there was no way that they could get it help in time, that it would die before they could do anything to help it.
As the owner of half of the plantations on the island, Gunn is one of the biggest users of 1080. In response to criticism in 2004 on Australian television, the director tried to justify the use of this poison.
Well, how do you feel about protected species dying for your business?
Well, there's too many of them, and we need to keep them at a reasonable level.
You're saying there's too many wombats and ringtail possum?
Yes, most certainly.
Well, why are they protected then? Why are they classed as endangered?
Well, because the numbers are getting too great. And the ringtail possums is a very small proportion of this. It's usually the brush possums that are poisoned, not ringtails.
Well, how can you say that, though, when you concede that this thing kills everything?
Well, that everything that goes there to eat, but I believe that it is an acceptable practice.
It is acceptable?
Practice.
To knock off all the wildlife in the surrounding area so that you can put your tree seedlings in?
Yes.
After 30 years, Evelyn DeVito ended up leaving her farm in Preolina in 2003 with a heavy heart.
Yes, we raised 2 daughters in Preolina, and we'd often come up here for a picnic on Sunday mornings if the weather was good, and just sit up here and enjoy being a family together. So, yes, there are a lot of emotions in that.
Another pollutant used by the forestry industry is enraging the locals. Colleen Dibley has lived in Preolina for 20 years. She and her husband have a chestnut farm.
It's a busy time for us, and we have a lot of chestnuts to get off for the orchard.
Shortly after her arrival, Colleen watched the 16 neighbouring farms disappear to be replaced by plantations. 4,500 hectares of eucalyptuses soaked with industrial herbicide.
That's a massive amount of herbicide laying in the soil and moving into the water system in the north of this state.
Bob Brown, the Green Party leader, accuses the Tasmanian foresters of using particularly toxic products.
They also come with pesticides, with chemicals, some of which are banned in Europe, and spray these onto trees to prevent insects on the growing plantations. And that washes into these rivers as well. So the naturalness of the rivers is very threatened.
The spokesperson of the wood industry, all these claims are exaggerated.
Plantations do require management, just like any agricultural exercise requires management. In agriculture, weeds need to be kept down. In plantations, in their establishment, weeds need to be kept down. And weedicides are used both in agriculture and in forestry.
Dr. Frank Nicholson, who works at Hobart Hospital in the Tasmanian capital, became particularly interested in the herbicides used by the forestry industry. At first, for personal reasons.
I grew up on a mixed farm in the northeast of Tasmania, and my brother continues the farming heritage in my family. In the 1990s, he had large areas of cleared ground bordering his grazing land converted to eucalypt plantations. In the process of that conversion, the herbicides, triazine herbicides were used, simazine and atrazine.
Many international studies have indicated that atrazine affects hormones and can cause infertility. In the year 2000, the EU banned the use of atrazine, declaring it dangerous for the environment and for public health. The French National Institute of Health and Medical Research says that atrazine may cause cancer. Despite this information, the wood industry's spokesperson sees no problem with the use of atrazine.
As far as the plantations are concerned, we have established guidelines, very stringent guidelines for the use of these chemicals, and we are satisfied that the chemicals we are using pose no hazard to human health.
In spite of the controversy, the use of atrazine is still legal in Tasmania. In 2001, Dr. Nicholson also made inquiries about the largest sawmill in Tasmania. It belongs to Gunn and is situated at Burnie, a port town with 20,000 inhabitants. Many people in the area are suffering from respiratory problems.
There was a respiratory epidemiologist, a professor in Melbourne that I spoke to, who raised the issues about asthma, but also about long-term exposure to wood dust being associated with a particular form of nasopharyngeal cancer with long-term exposure. And I also spoke to the Secretary of the Maritime Union of Australia, who worked on the site and who also expressed concerns for his workers' health.
Wood is a particularly favourable environment for the development of the bacteria which cause the potentially fatal Legionnaire's disease, which leads to pneumonia. Dr. Nicholson asked Gunns to carry out an investigation of all the health risks the sawmill presents.
In 2002, they released a media release, and the media release indicated that Legionella wasn't found in the wood chip piles. And in my opinion, there were other health risk concerns that weren't addressed in that media release, and that there wasn't sufficient disclosure about the other health risks that we had suggested may be present in the wood chip piles. Very soon after that media release came out, I was asked to retract the comments that I'd made in the media, and I said that I was prepared to do that, but I was only prepared to do that if they would make available the reports so that I could read the reports and just see what had been found.
Gunns still refuses to make the study public and sued Dr. Nicholson for libel. We tried to speak to the CEO of Gunns, John Gay, to get some response to the Ecologists' various accusations.
I don't believe that they will actually make any comments.
Someone from the communication to have an interview.
You came in the other day, didn't you?
Yeah.
No, well, I don't think so, but I'll ring them and I'll...
Why is it so complicated to have someone from you? I mean, I just want you to
It's not complicated. It's not complicated. That's our decision.
And why? I mean, I don't understand why it's so complicated to have someone to
Despite 20 phone calls to the press office over 3 months, the CEO never did agree to an interview. Now Gunns has decided to get their own back on the Ecologists, one by one. They are systematically taking all their opponents to court. Lou Geraghty is 54 years old. A mother of 4, she lives in southeast Tasmania, in Huonville.
We're now at where I live. This house I originally was building a guest house up here and an ecotourism venture that I was going to start out until, of course, I found out that the area was going to be logged. And all this area down here was over 1,000 acres to be logged and clearfelled. It's never picked back up again. I've never taken it back up again because Gunns, of course, is still suing me over it.
In 2003, Lou Geraghty's life was turned upside down. That year, she took part in a demonstration organised by activists who blocked access to some land belonging to Gunns.
Weekends and school holidays. I can't do that. I cannot do that with the industrial forestry operation going on in this area.
We advise you obstructing the flow of traffic and maintenance construction work on Baker Street Road, Lucaston. I advise you, if you do not move when directed to do so, you will be arrested for obstruction. It is my duty to ensure free passage.
The protesters blocked Gunn's heavy machinery, as Gunn wanted to create an industrial plantation of 1,000 hectares. 6 years later, Lou Geraghty revisits the scene of the protest.
The majority of the people that come here for the lifestyle. To be able to have a little bit of bush, to live in the country, bring their kids up in safety, not to come to an area where they're going to end up with major industrial logging in the area and log trucks up and down the road. Well, you've come
Under pressure from the protesters, Gunn's finally dropped its plan for the plantation. But Lou Geraghty received a letter from their lawyers. She found herself in court.
I'm being sued for trespass, I'm being sued for vandalism, defamation of Guns' character, causing Guns to lose money, which is just ridiculous. The whole lawsuit is ridiculous.
Guns also accused Lou and 20 other people, including Dr. Nicholson, Bob Brown and his assistant, of conspiracy. Some of them were quickly cleared, others settled out of court. We got hold of the letter Guns sent to the protesters. In the document, Guns offers to drop the charges, but only under certain conditions.
The undertakings they want from me in particular is that I don't trespass on any of their land, that is Tribunna pulp mill, the pulp mill area, the Tribunna mill, Hampshire mill, their offices in Launceston, that I don't protest against them.
Most astonishing of all, the letter states that the signatory must renounce all ecological activity, organising, coordinating, or even taking part in the slightest action against Guns.
I don't believe that anyone should have to do that. It's freedom of speech to protest against something that you don't believe should be happening.
Lou Geraghty blocked the road and stopped Guns' heavy machinery from passing through. Therefore, she risks penalisation from the Australian justice system.
The risk to me is that I could lose everything. I could lose my home, lose my land. I have a small business in Huonville, an organic cafe, I could lose that. Not so much in what I'd have to pay back to Guns, it'd be what I'd have to pay in legal fees if I lose.
Guns is claiming more than $6 million Australian dollars from the protesters. This is to cover their legal costs, as the campaign has been going on for years and has involved dozens of lawyers. However, Lou is not about to give in.
Now will tell you that I would not ever sign any documents to say that I would not ever protest against something that against Guns wood chip company or any other wood chip company.
The latest battle in the war between Guns and the Ecologists is taking place in the north of Tasmania, at Tamar, a little piece of paradise on the coast of the Indian Ocean. Here, Guns is planning to construct the biggest paper pulp factory in the world. In this simulation, we see a factory more than a kilometre in length, capable of producing 1 million tonnes of paper pulp every year. For the industrialists, this project will mean they no longer have to send the wood chips to Japan, thus benefiting Tasmania.
The critical importance of the pulp mill is that it provides the opportunity to value add what is otherwise a commodity product. Instead of selling wood chips into the international market, we're able to process that product here and sell a value-added product into the market as bleached pulp.
To create publicity for Guns' factory, the local government of Tasmania donated the equivalent of €3 million. Buses crisscrossed the island promoting the project. On the 30th of April 2007, the Tasmanian Parliament even voted in a special law to allow Guns to build a factory without the usual external surveys. In response, the eco-warriors once again went into battle. In November 2007, 10,000 people took to the streets of Hobart. They demonstrated against the construction of the paper pulp factory and the pollution it would cause. In January 2009, there was a new twist in the story. The Australian Minister for the Environment ratified the Guns project. And the Minister for the Environment is not just anyone. It's Peter Garrett. One of the first environmental activists, he became famous in the 1980s with his rock band Midnight Oil. At the time, Peter Garrett was dubbed the Green Giant. Now a minister, he has somewhat lost his revolutionary zeal. We contacted him for an explanation for his decision to back the guns factory, but he refused to comment. Senator Bob Brown has known Garrett for many years. Together they led many ecological battles. Now he is disappointed.
Peter Garrett was my friend, and he is still, but he was also loudly spoke out for the environment and for the forests. And now he will not come here. He will not see people on the issue of forests in Tasmania. He has become part of the system which is destroying these forests.
In May 2009, the eco-warriors prepared for one last battle against the factory at Tamar. Australian ecologist Vicar Bailey leads the fold.
So we're going to rendezvous down here with some boats and ferry our folk over the other side of the river to the pulp mill site. And then once in the pulp mill site, we'll lay out the big banners and have them in place for when the media arrive and when an aeroplane comes over the top to take photographs and footage.
The campaign is perfectly organised. The protesters know that their main weapon is the media.
Are there any video crew here, people that would mind taking some footage?
With a little camera?
With a little camera?
Nothing is left to chance, even how to act, should the authorities intervene.
We're certainly not intending to get people arrested today, so if that dialogue is breaking down and they're serious about arresting people and bringing charges and so forth, we are comfortable with pulling this action, and working towards the next one.
The protesters are dispatched to the site of the future factory in small groups. Boats have been prepared to transport the local media and their cameras. They have even arranged for a small aeroplane in order to film and take photos from above.
My name's Lucy Landon Lane and I live 2 kilometres from the pulp mill site on an organic walnut farm. I fear what it will do to our ocean. I fear what it will do to the pollution that will go into the air. I fear what happens in our forests, the fact that our native forests will be cut down to feed the mill. For myself personally, I fear that our organic status will be destroyed. I fear for my family's health. And our life savings, we potentially will lose half our life savings if this pulp mill goes ahead because properties have been devalued to such an extent.
The protesters are not just worried about air or water pollution. Their other major concern is the overconsumption of the island's natural resources.
One of the major concerns of Tasmanians, as it is around the world, is water. Water globally is in crisis and Tasmania is no exception, and this pulp mill would consume 26 billion litres of water every single year. Fresh water, fresh drinking quality water. So while cities in Tasmania like Launceston and other areas are in water restrictions over the summer, people have to watch what they use and the amount of water that they use, this pulp mill would consume millions upon millions upon millions of tonnes every single year.
Guns claims that the factory will not cause pollution, but will create jobs. 2,500 for the construction, 1,600 to operate it once it is built.
The reality is it is going to create jobs. It takes jobs to build pulp mills and it takes jobs to operate pulp mills. But the question is, what are the alternatives for Tasmania? Tasmania occupies a particular niche in the world. We are seen as clean, green and pristine. We have a massive tourism industry that is based upon natural experiences on our mountains, on our wild rivers and on our forests. What we are saying is that this pulp mill, while it may create some jobs, is not compatible to a safe, healthy and prosperous Tasmania into the future.
At 3 o'clock, the demonstration wraps up. It has brought together 24 protesters, 2 television crews and some local papers. The impact on the media seems modest, but Vicar Bailey knows how to increase it tenfold. His weapon, the internet. The artisan activism of the 1960s is over. Today, eco-warriors are using new technologies to get their message across to a global audience.
So look, we've just sent out a media release for the action, just to advise the media that it's happened and that it's successful and so forth, and just about to sort through the photographs, the images, and we'll pull together a package of them and then send that out as well.
Guns is still in need of funds to pay for their €1 billion project. So the Ecologists' strategy is to hit the industrialists where it hurts, in their wallets. In May 2008, they started an international campaign against guns.
We've mailed customers of guns, we've mailed the staff of the banks that Guns banks with, and that in itself has generated, revolt and revolution within the bank to the point where they've walked away, turned their back on guns and this project, and they've refused to fund the project. So internet's been incredibly powerful in terms of getting the message out to individuals and urging them to take action. And in the case of the banks, it's getting them to talk to their manager, who talks to his manager, who talks to his manager.
As a result of the lobbying, ANZ Bank, which had been loyal to Guns for 15 years, refused to finance the factory project in Tamar. The Ecologists also took out a full-page ad in the Financial Times. They published a list of all the banks which had refused to invest in Guns factory, and they applied pressure on those who had not yet announced their decision. The campaign also had an effect on Guns clients.
Mitsubishi Japan is the overwhelming customer for Guns, and Mitsubishi is a big paper producer in that country. So, largely they've reformed their purchasing practices and they're not buying old growth anymore.
Senator Bob Brown, however, has no illusions. Guns will soon find the missing funds to build a factory at Tamar. The Ecologists are losing the fight. The senator knows it, and he's angry.
These are vandals in the Cathedral of Nature. Look at what is happening to these forests which belong to all of humanity and our fellow creatures. This is an evil and it's an environmental crime which is incredible in one of the wealthiest, most modern countries. We do not need to be doing this. It is just to make money for the Sydney and Tokyo Stock Exchange.
Every year, 15,000 hectares of Tasmanian forest are being wiped out. Man has already destroyed 85% of the giant eucalyptus trees. These survivors from prehistory are now facing extinction.